Good morning, students. I hope so. Everyone is good and everyone is fit and fine. So, today we are going to start with this new chapter, which is from the subject history, and this is going to be your lecture 1 from the chapter 11, the making of the national movement from 1870s till 1947. So, in this particular chapter, the things that we are going to learn and we'll be discussing about are basically all the movements that we have come across in the struggle of our independence, and there are so many leaders who have been there, who have struggled so much for our independence, and whatever movement that they have led into, we are going to discuss each and every movement here. So basically in the period of 18 to 1870s till 1947, whatever movements that happened and how many groups that have been came across, and whatever many of them were satisfied and many of them were against them. So all of these particular things we are going to be discussing in this particular chapter. But first of all, what will be the topics that we'll be discussing today are the topics to be covered for today will be, first of all, I'm just going to give you an introduction about what this chapter is about and what we are going to learn. Then we are going to study about the emergence of nationalism. So basically how this feeling of nationalism have been put into in the heart of people, and how people felt that they should be now find some independence for themselves and they should lead for some Swaraj for themselves. So that we will be studying. And then a nation in the making. So basically they have started their struggle for their independence from that particular period of time. We will be studying that, and the homework I will be assigning you with this particular chapter. So these will be the topics that I am going to let you know and we will be learning and discussing today. So everyone, please be ready with your books, one notebook where you can write down your notes, and one pen in your hand to write those notes. So shall we start with the lecture now? Okay, so I'm starting with the lecture now. So first of all, I just want to give you a quick introduction about the chapter. So basically from the previous chapters, you have looked upon a lot of things that you have studied till now. So basically the British conquest of territories that have taken over to different kingdoms. Then there were introduction of new kind of laws and administrative institutions. Then there were changes in the lives of peasants and tribals. There were different educational changes that we have seen in the 19th century, and there were different debates regarding the condition of women that was there. Then there was challenges to the caste system that we have seen. Social and religious reforms we have seen it there. Then there was a revolt of 1847 that was one of the most important revolt, and its aftermath that we have seen and discussed. Then the decline of craft and growth of industry that came across after that. Now on the basis of what you have read till now and all the issues that you have read till now, do you think that Indians were disconnected with British rule? If so, how were different groups and classes were dissatisfied? So basically whatever you have studied with, in this, can you agree with certain things that most of the Indians were discontented towards the British rule, and there were so many groups that have been emerged across who were dissatisfied with the British rule, and they want to have their own independent country, and they want to have their own self nation that they wanted to be in it. So basically their struggle begins from their dissatisfaction with the British rule. So in the chapter we are going to study that only, that how their dissatisfaction lead to a nation in a making, and there were different movements that we have came across, and after that we got our independence. So first of all, we should know about how this emergence of nationalism feeling was came across in the heart of people, and how it is basically they thought of to get an independence for their nation, or to be live in an independent nation basically. So in the first topic, the emergence of nationalism, we are going to discuss and talk about that only. So first of all, in the above mentioned development that you have read before, we have led to the people to ask a very crucial question: what is this country of India and for whom it is meant? So basically the first question that arises in the mind of people at that point of time, because they were just showing their dissatisfaction. They were not taking any particular move for that. So what is this country of India and for whom it is meant for? So basically that was the main question that was arising in the head of most of the people, and the answer that gradually emerged was India was the people of India, not the Britishers who were ruling our country. So all the people who were irrespective of any class, color, caste, creed, language or gender, any of them, the country belonged to the people of Indians, not any other person who or any other British, or that the people who have came across from other country who were basically ruling them in their own country. So that was the only answer that was coming across from all of these different groups that have been made there. So basically they think that India is the people of our own Indians, and all the people irrespective of any caste, color, creed, language or gender they belong to, the country belongs to us. So and the country, its resources, its the system that we are having were meant for all of them, not for these Britishers. So with this answer, they came the awareness that the British were exercising control over the resources of India. So after the emergence of this particular thought and the answer they were gradually coming up with, they have come across and they were getting aware about this particular thing, that what was going around them. That was basically the Britishers were trying to rule them, control them, dominate them and exercise their particular things and control over all the resources that India were producing and the lives of people as well in our country. And until this control was ended, India could not be for Indians. So basically, if this particular control will be there in the hand of Britishers, we Indians cannot be free and we Indians cannot be as Indians, basically. So that was the conclusion that they got from this, that we need to, like, the first thing that they got with this particular question is that they were aware that we are under the control of Britishers and we are under the domination of Britishers, and they were exercising the control over us. So basically we could not find any independence for our own self. We could not be called an Indians if the Britishers are going to control over us. So this consciousness began to be clearly stated by the political associations formed after 1850. So basically their consciousness, basically their awareness about all these things were coming up, and they all were stating about this political association that was forming with 1950, especially those that came into being in the 1970s and 1880s. So basically there were many political associations that were coming up, different kind of groups that they were making, and they were emerging with this particular thought only, and they were leading towards the how we can manage to, like, took over the control from the British that was being there at that point of time. So most of these were led by English educated professionals such as lawyers. So all these members of this different group that they have been made in, they were basically led by different sort of English educated professionals. Those were the different lawyers, and the more important ones were the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. So basically that was a kind of a party that was being emerging at that point of time. So they were different sort of, just currently we have different kind of political parties. They were these different groups and political associations that have been built, and according to in their agendas they were working upon to bring India their independence. So the most important ones were Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, the Indian Association, the Madras Mahajan Sabha, the Bombay Presidency Association, and of course the Indian National Congress. So these were the different political associations that have been building up with their own agendas to bring India some sort of Swaraj and some sort of independence for themselves, and they could aware people about the thought that have been coming up with these kind of questions that British are ruling them. They should also aware them. So they were having their own agendas with that. Now note the name. The first is Pune Sarvajanik Sabha. So basically the first political association that was being named as Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, that was the literal meaning of Sarvajanik is of or for all the people. So basically, if we like cut the particular name Sarvajnik, so basically the meaning of this is of the people, like or for all the people. So through this particular meaning, with this they can associate with people more. So through many of these associations functioned in specific parts of the country, their main agenda, or we can say goal, were stated as the goals of for all the people of India. So majorly they want to attract people with their name. So the major association functioning was to get through in the mind of people, and with their name they were basically making their presence in the mind of people at that time. So their goal, the major goal that they want was to state as the goals for all the people of India, not for a specific one, but for they want to generate awareness in for all the people of India, not those of any kind of religion, community or class they belong to. They just want to be like give their services for all the people, not to any specific kind of class, community or region. So they worked with the idea that the people should be sovereigns. Now what does sovereigns means here? If you know this, that it means that the empowerment to act independently without any internal or external control. So basically you are independent to do whatever kind of things you want to do internally or externally. There is no one to control over you. So a modern conciseness and a key feature of nationalism was been developed with that. And in other words, they believe that the Indian people should be empowered to take decisions regarding their affairs. So basically the emergence and the awareness they want to spread in their particular country, especially in the Indian people, was to empower them so that they can take their own decisions regarding any of their particular issues and affairs. Now, there were a lot of dissatisfaction with British rule intensified in the 1870s and 1880s. So there were a lot of people who were coming up and they were very much dissatisfied with the British rule that have been seen in the period of 1870s till 1880s. Now there were Arms Act was passed in 1878. So first thing that has been developed was the Arms Act, which was passed in 1878, that was basically disallowing Indians from possessing arms. So basically that this was a rule that have been made for the Indians, that they were not allowing Indians to have basically any sort of ruler guns or any sort of pistols in the hand, possessing arms, making that. So in the same year, the Vernacular Press Act was also enacted in an effort to silence those who were critical of the government. So basically in the same year, there was one more act that had been came up, that was Vernacular Press Act, which was enacted for the effort to silence the all the critical things that was going on around the government. So basically in that particular act, they allowed the government to basically take away all the assets from them, like the assets of newspapers, including their printing presses, if the newspapers published anything that was found objectable. So the Britishers were taking away all the power which can influence or aware people with that. So in their particular act, they allowed the government, but basically जो भी Britishers say, they were allowing them to take away their all the assets of printing presses, newspaper handlings, whichever from wherever they can publish about anything against of the Britishers, so that they were not able to do that. So basically anything they saw that anyone is publishing anything wrong for them, they found objectable, they were basically taking away their things. So in 1883 there was a furor over the attempt by the government to introduce the Albert Bill. So basically there was a lot of questioning that was happening, and there was a lot of attempts by the government to basically introduce this Albert Bill. Now what this bill was, basically the bill provided for the trial of British or European persons by Indians, and sought equality between British and Indian judges in the country. So basically this bill was very much the Britishers wanted to basically a part over that, and they were majorly debating it, that they want to introduce this Albert Bill in this particular bill, they wanted to provide the trial of British or European persons by Indian, means that they want proper equality between Britishers and European persons. They want citizenship, basically citizenship for them, that they are equally a part of them and they should be treated similarly, and sort of equality between British and Indian judges in the country. But when the white opposition forced the government to withdraw the bill, Indians were enraged. So basically, there were many things that was coming up. There were a lot of white, like the Britishers were opposing this particular bill more often, because they were stating that they want कि Indians को power ना मिले कि in any how. They don't want that Indians should get that particular power. So basically for that they want to withdraw the bill, but after that Indians were more regating, they more wanted that this bill should happen. So the event was highlighted the rational attitudes of the British in India. So basically the event was majorly highlighted by as the rational attitudes of the British in India. Now the need for an all India organization of educated Indians had been felt in 1880s. So basically after that there was a need for all India organizations that were built for basic to give awareness. So for that they need educated people, educated Indians. So for that they started that they should start an organization of educating Indians, had been felt since 1880, but the Albert Bill controversy deepened this particular desire. So the Indian National Congress was established with 72 delegates from all over the country, and they met at Bombay in December 1885. So basically there was an emergence of Indian National Congress that was established with 72 delegates from all over the country, and they met at Bombay in December 1885 for this particular issue. The early leadership was by Dadabhai Naoroji. If you know him, and he was the basic first of all leader of the particular National Congress Party. Then there was Feroz Shah Mehta, then there was Bahaduddin Tyabji, V.C. Banerjee, then Surendranath Banerjee, Romesh Chandra Dutt, S. Subramanya Iyer. There were and a lot more others leaders were also there who were a part of this National Congress Party, and they were largely collected from Bombay and Calcutta. Now Naoroji was a businessman and published settled in London, and for a time member of the British Parliament, he guided the younger nationalists more often, and he was a retired British official of A.O. Hume, and he also played a part in bringing Indians from the various regions all together. Now basically how this nation in the making was how Congress was one of the party who have stated that they will bring this nation in a making, and they will find Swaraj in some way often. So basically they wanted that this particular feeling of independence should be there in the heart of people, and they should start fighting for it. So it was their movement that should start for a nation in the making. It has often been said that the Congress in the first 20 years was moderate in its objectives and methods. So basically it was being stated by the Congress party only, like in the starting of this particular period, in the starting of 20 years of this time, people were very much into it, and their objective and methods were very much clear that they wanted the independence. But during this period, it demanded a greater voice for Indians in the government and in the administration too. But for obviously there is a lot of emergence of people, but everyone needs a leader who is going to guide them, who is going to lead them, and who is going to take up the leading path, who are basically going to give answers to these Britishers. So during this period, they demanded a greater voice for Indians, who can voice for India and to these particular government members and their administrative persons. So it wanted the legislative councils to be made more representative for them, give more power, and introduced in provinces where none were existed. So basically in their government, in their council membership, there were no particular Indians. In their legislative member also, there were very less Indians. So basically for that they wanted that they should get equal part in the legislative assemblies, in council membership, being there should be more representatives, and a lot more other things that they demanded. It demanded that Indians be placed in high positions in the government. So they wanted that the Indian representative members should have a good position in the government, not the Britishers. For this purpose, it called for civil service examinations to be held in India as well, not just in London. So basically for that purpose, they started with this civil service examination to be held in India as well, not just that is happening in London. And the demand for Indianization of the administration was part of a movement against racism, since most important jobs at the time were monopolized by white officials, and the British generally assumed that Indians could not be given position of responsibility. So the main demand of Indians was that to be an Indian, or to know as a nationalization in the administration department, there was different movement that was emerging up, and with that they were all against of racism. And since most of the jobs at particular time was being assigned by these white officials only, and the Britishers were very much against of this Indians, so they wanted that Indians could not be given any sort of positions of responsibility in the basic legislative assemblies or government they want to be a part in. So since British officers was sending a major part of their large salaries home, Indianization, it was hoped, would also reduce the drain of wealth to England. So basically, if Indianization was coming up in the administrative and in the council membership, the most of these British officers were taking a lot of money from India, large salaries and their home. So with that, they thought that because of Indianization, they hoped that it would reduce the drain of wealth to England. And others were demanding include the separation of the judiciary from the executive, and the repeal of the Arms Act, and the freedom of speech and expression too. So basically their main demands were including the separation of the judiciary from the executive, and they want that the repeal of this Arms Act should be there, with the freedom of speech and expression for Indians. Now the early Congress also raised a number of economic issues. They declared that British rule had led to poverty and famines. Increase in the land revenue had improvised peasants and zamindars and exports of grains to Europe, and had created food shortage as well. So basically in the early Congress sessions, they raised a number of economic issues at that point of time. What were these issues? The first one was they declared that British rule had led to a lot of poverty in our country and famines. They increased in the land revenue more often, and they have improvised peasants. They have taken a very long provisions from peasants and zamindars, and they have export a lot of grains to their own country, Europe, and had created food shortage in India. So the Congress demanded to reduction of the revenue that they were paying to the British government. They want to cut in military expenditure, and they want more funds for irrigation. So this particular, it passed many resolutions on the Salt Act, salt tax, then there was treatment of Indian laborers that was going to abroad, and the suffering of forest dwellers. All these were taking a part of in the Congress precise. So they caused basically they were caused by an interfering forest administration. तो उनमें क्या था कि basically जो कि forest administration they were like keeping all the laborers in that particular forest only, and they were not like giving them any freedom so that they can go out of that forest dwell. So all this showed that despite being a body of the educated elite, the Britishers were saying them, the Congress did not talk only on behalf of Indians only there. Then there were basically the moderate leaders wanted to develop public awareness about the unjust nature of British rule. So basically after that there were a lot of modern leaders who were coming up, and they want to develop public awareness about the unjust nature of British rule, and they want to publish newspapers, they want to write articles, and they want to show how British rule was leading to this economic ruin of the country. They criticized a lot about British rule in their particular articles and the speeches that they have given, and they have also sent their representatives to different part of the country to mobilize their public opinions. So basically, their main motive was to degrade the come over from this British rule. They want to like showcase, aware people about their particular things through their newspaper articles and through their speeches, and they also they were sending their representative to different parts of the country to basically aware people and to mobilize the public opinion all together, so that everyone should come together and like spread their dissatisfaction against this British rule. So they felt that the British had respect for the ideals of freedom and justice, and so they would accept the just demands of Indians. So basically, they think that the Britishers were very much respected for the ideals of freedom and justice. So they could have they were expecting basically that they can fulfill some decent demands of Indians. So what was necessary therefore was to express their demands and make the government aware of the feelings of Indians. So their major agenda at that point of time to express their demands so that they can express what they want and make the government aware of their feelings of Indians. Now what was that particular thing? That was the freedom in our birthright. So that was their main agenda, that they want the Britishers to know about the freedom is our birthright. So by the 1980s, many Indians began to raise question about the political side of the Congress. Like in Bengal, they were, and Maharashtra and Punjab, leaders such as Bipin Chandra Pal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Lala Lajpat Rai, they were beginning to explore more radical objectives and different methods. They were criticizing the moderates for their politics of prayers and emphasized the importance of self-reliance and constructive work a lot. So with the time that was coming up after 1890s, there were many leaders who were basically raising their voice over from their political point of view from Congress in different part of the country. Like in Bengal, Maharashtra, Punjab, there were many leaders who were coming up to explore their and start their radical objectives and methods to aware people about their demands, and they criticized all these moderates that was coming up for their politics of prayers, and they emphasized moreover self-reliance and constructive work. So in 1905, Victor Cruzon partitionated Bengal, and at that time Bengal was the biggest province of British India and included Bihar and parts of Odisha as well. So basically in 1905, what the incident basically that happened, he was Victor Cruzon have partitioned Bengal, and at that time Bengal was the biggest province because it was the capital of India that was being called. So the British India was included Bihar and parts of Odisha as well. The British urged for dividing Bengal for reasons of administrative convenience, but what did wrong was that administrative convenience means, इसका मतलब ही क्या है? So basically those convenience did it represent, clearly it was closely tied to the interest of British officials and businessmen. So basically what does this administrative consignment means, and how Britishers want to divide Bengal? What was their main agenda over it? So basically their main agenda was administrative convenience only. But what does it mean? So basically it was closely tied to the interest of British officials and businessmen, where they urged that people must rely on their own strength, not on the good intentions of the government, and people must fight for Swaraj. And Tilak raised the slogan, "Freedom is my birthright and I shall live with it." So that was the main thing that was coming, and that they want that they should find more strength for their own. Indians should find strength within yourself. They should have good intentions and they should not follow the government. People must fight for their own Swaraj, for their own independence. And Tilak have always raised this particular slogan, "Freedom is my birthright and I shall have it." So the partition of Bengal infuriated people all over India, and all sections of the Congress, the moderates and the radicals, as they may be called, opposed it. There were large public meetings and demonstrations were organized, and there were different novel methods of mass protest that was developed, and the struggle that unfolded came to be known as the Swadesi movement, and strongest in Bengal, but with echoes elsewhere too. In Deltic Andhra, for instance, it was known as the Bande Mataram movement. So after the partition of Bengal, that then came up all over India, all the section of Congress, where there were different moderates and radical movement that were coming on, they were all were opposing this particular movement, and there were large public meetings that would happen there in different mass protests that developed, because their struggle was for their own right. This particular partition gave a lot more power for the people so that they can lead their own Swarajya movement, and that was the strongest in Bengal, and that also known as their Vande Mataram movement too. So even so, instead of removing the non-Bengali areas from the province, the government separated East Bengal and merged with Assam. So perhaps the main British motive was to curtail the influence of Bengali politicians, but they also want to split the Bengali people as well. But with this Swadeshi movement, they oppose all the British rule, and they encourage the idea of self-help, Swadeshi enterprise, national education, and the use of Indian languages. To fight for Swaraj, the radicals advocated mass mobilization and the boycott of British institutions and goods. Some individuals also began to suggest that revolutionary violence and would be necessary to overthrow this particular British rule. And after that, there was a lot of opening of different decades of the 20th century that was came up, where that was marked as other developments too. Like there was a group of Muslim landlords and Nawabs that was formed with All India Muslim League at Dhaka in 1906. So the League was basically supporting the partition of Bengal, and they desire separate electorates for Muslims, and the demand conceded by the government in 1909. Some seats in the councils were now reserved for Muslims, who could be elected by Muslim voters only, and this tempted politicians to gather a following by distributing favors to their own religious groups. Meanwhile, the Congress split in 1907. The moderates were opposed to the use of boycott, and they felt that it involved the use of force. And after the split of the Congress, they came to be dominated over the moderates with Tilak followers, and they were different functioning from outside and west. So there were two groups that have been reunited altogether in December 1915. That was the next year of the Congress and the Muslim League. They both come together, and they have signed the historic Lucknow Pact, and they decided to work together for representative government in the country. So that's it for today's lecture. If you find any difficulty, any queries that you are having from today's lecture, you can let me know in the online class. And today's homework, you have to do these 4 questions as homework. The first one is, why were people dissatisfied with British rule in the decade of 1870s till 1880s? Question number 2, when Vernacular Press Act was passed in? Question number 3, the early Congress also raised a number of economic issues. Explain the statement. And question number 4, write a short note on the nation in making movement. So these are the homework questions that you have to do. So if you find any difficulty in your homework in the lecture for today, you can let me know in the online class. Okay, so that's it. Thank you so much for listening to this lecture, and please take care of yourself.